Okay, we're back. I'm Jennifer,
I'm Iyabo.
and one of the first topics we want to talk about is the bubble. And we have different ways of looking at it and talking about it, but for me, in the world that I live in and it can inhabit easily on an everyday basis, is in the South, in Atlanta. I live in my bubble, and I can actually physically mark out the bubble I live in, which is largely Brookhaven. And my kids go to school nearby. I go to work nearby. I can sort of meander in my area. I don't have to go very far outside of it, and maybe I'll go down to Buckhead um, and engage with certain friends of this similar social location, similar racial background, similar economic background, um, somewhat educational. There's a little bit of variation in there, but I really have no pressing need to go outside my circle. Um, and I can go hang out with my friends and go to parties and interact and socialize and not feel like I'm challenged with a lot that would kind of disrupt that level of comfort. It's a level of comfort and of belonging and knowing who my friends are and knowing what we like. And oh, we like to go shopping at Costco, and oh, we like to go to these restaurants, and oh, we like to go to these kinds of movies, and oh, we like to do these kinds of activities. And it's all just kind of fine. And we can support each other and cheer each other on and raising our kids and our families. But that for me is not enough. And my level of frustration, I would have to say, has increased a little bit. So I, like to challenge myself, and I like to push my friends to kind of go outside of this bubble. And again, thankfully, when Trump got elected, I think it shook a lot of people up, and a lot of white women who did vote for Hillary who were severely disappointed. I had a meeting in my house the following week. Some people were in shock. Some people were devastated, emotionally distraught. What do we do now? So it's like, okay, now we're waking up. Like, we don't like what's going on. Let's actually kind of go out into the world and figure out what's happening and try to engage with different people to come together to fight against this force, this person, this entity, and everything that he represents that we don't like. And it really, I think, forced people to really look at what their values are and if they're willing to stand by those values. Mm-hmm. And thankfully, it pushed me, it pushed more of my friends who were mostly white women out of that zone and wanting to really stand up for and fight for what they believe in. So the bubble, for me is this kind of, it's not invisible, but it is kind of a line. And when I try to push myself beyond it or engage other people or bring other people along and, outside the bubble of comfort, I can see a resistance. So it's always kind of this like, okay, let's talk about this subject. Oh, no, we don't have to talk about that, or do you want to come with me to this event? Oh, you know what? I can't, my kids have softball, or I've got to go to this function or whatever, this party. So then it's sort of like, okay, I get it. You're busy, but at the same time, you're not wanting to engage. And that's the message I'm getting. So then, do I continue? How do I continue spending time with you? How do I continue, a relationship with you when I'm feeling drawn to really, keep moving and going in a direction where I feel, since I'm becoming more aware of the bubble, I don't want to stay stuck in it. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. It makes sense. But I want to push back a little bit. When you were talking about the bubble, I thought, what's wrong with community? And I think all of us, one way or another, try to create community because we are designed to be social beings and we want to belong and fit in. I know for me, I was very intentional about where I want to live. And I live in Clarkston, the most diverse 1 square mile in all of America, where you have over 70 countries in this 1 square mile. and they're all refugees. And also, there are a bunch of progressive white people that live there in that community that want to support the refugee community, but it's almost on the edge of gentrifying that neighborhood, which is an issue, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with community, but I do think that there is a problem with the relentless pursuit of prestige. And I think in this country we do that a lot, very unconsciously. You know, this type of handbag and these type of sunglasses, these labels, this Prada, this Coco Chanel, whatever, they become aspects to our identity. And they shape and define us in how we present ourselves to other people. And they end up putting us in this imaginary bubble that's also a jail, you know, because you get locked into how am I being perceived? And so if all your friends are from that nice little yoga class with the yoga teacher that did a whole year in India and lives in Lenox high-rise building or whatever, you know, like, I think we have to ask ourselves questions like, who are the other people in the yoga class? Who are the other people in the Pure Beret class? Who are the other people at my wine shop, my local neighborhood wine shop? Am I seeing a diversity of people? And I think that when you are the default, you don't get to think about the exceptions, right? So to me, from my social location, I see middle class to upper middle class white women living in this bubble of the husband, the house, the white picket fence, the 2.5 kids plus the dog, the 2 cars, the minivan, the toys in the front. It's a lifestyle that is seriously marketed to us, and it becomes the embodiment of what success is. So like in my coaching, I'm always asking people, what do you think of success as? And I like working with people that have gotten those things and are like, wait a minute, it's supposed to feel better than this.
Right.
And it doesn't.
So
and there's a whole set of people that are scared to listen to, it doesn't feel right. It should be more satisfying.
And what is it that doesn't feel right? Success at the expense of what?
Right.
At the expense of identity.
Right. I think one of my teachers is Parker Palmer, and he talks about the difference between your soul and your role. And I think globally the problem is that we live from these roles, and we don't even know we're living from these roles. We don't know how much society has put those expectations on us, and it keeps us locked in this bubble. And so,
and I'm someone who knows so well the expectations, and I try to examine them constantly. And when I try to help others, they don't really want my help. Probably, but I feel like it's important for me to do that.
Right.
Like, why am I doing what I'm doing? Why am I working to make this money? Why am I trying to make this degree? Why do I want to send my kids to this particular school? And, and then you talk about belonging. So my kids are biracial.
Right.
They can kind of get in the bubble. They can stay in the bubble as long as they sort of represent a certain side of themselves and they act, I don't want to say white, but they act like the default, right?
They act more like their Western identity.
Their Western identity.
Than their Islamic
identity. So at the expense of
Islamic or Arabic, because those are 2 different aspects of their identity.
Absolutely. An Egyptian. So I felt like I had to make a choice and sort of sacrifice in a way. Okay, I'm your mother. Anyone asks, I'm your mother. They look at me, they see a white woman. Okay, I know who that kid is. Your father's not here, so people don't have to feel threatened or that they see that difference in you except for your skin color, which is still observed and felt. So that at the expense, and the desire to raise kids, and in a way that's comfortable for them. Yes, do you want them to belong? I do want them to belong. As you said, everyone has a need to belong. But that was my choice. Mm-hmm. It was easier for me coming back to the States to kind of, let that unfold the way it did and to fall back into my privilege. So, again, I do partake in it, but I also feel uncomfortable with staying in that place at the expense of other people and participating in systems of oppression, racism, sexism, classism.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that, because I think the problem, not that I know that the problem with the bubble, right, is that it is not community. It is not just community.
Good.
It is a tool of oppression. And a lot of people who are in the bubble do not understand what impact their bubble is having on the rest of the world. And we come out of this historical lens of empire. So, you think of the British Empire, you think of the Roman Empire, you think of all these old historical empires, right? And even studying Nigerian history and culture, we had a bunch of empires. And empire is always about domination and oppression. So the British Empire came to Nigeria and, engaged in the slave trade, raped the land of human resources, brought in guns, all this stuff. We took it too now. It wasn't a one, there was an exchange, right? Mm-hmm. I think we got the short end of the stick, but okay. So this exchange translates over time into different things. Nigeria was just, a line was drawn in the sand saying, okay, this country, we're just going to make all these people Nigerians. There are over 300 different ethnic groups in this umbrella called Nigeria. From independence in 1960 till now, there are turf disputes always going on. It's so difficult to put one umbrella under something like that, and to put all these people under one umbrella like that. And what it does is it helps me see what is going on in America, right? So people in the West are very different than people in the Northeast. They're very different from Southern folks. They're very different from Middle American folks. And then we have the Native Americans. And then we have the Latino community. We have the African American community. And even African Americans up north are very different than African Americans down south. But what happens is, if you're in this bubble, right, the bubble of privilege, I know everybody hates that word, right? But this bubble of privilege, the biggest thing I wish people would understand is that this bubble of privilege gives the illusion and the power for the people within the bubble to be the default setting.
Yeah.
And the biggest way I can think of default setting is back in the day when all Band-Aids were more like your complexion than my complexion, right?
Yeah.
That's default. Now we have Dory, we have Shrek, we have all this stuff. Things have improved in that area. But you know how long it takes for the underlying thinking to change, right? The products can change, but the underlying thinking doesn't change. That's why we don't have a female president, because everybody thought it should be a male. So right. Outies trump innies when it comes to the bubble, right? Outies trump innies. That's how I always put it. But it's a default. It's like, and we don't know. Like our internalized concept of what is power is very male dominated.
Oh, that's
and
good.
So, it's just naturally in our heads. And my hope is that our listeners will come away from today wondering about, what bubble am I in? Is my bubble oppressive?
Is it a community?
Is it actually a community or a tool of oppression? Or is it both? And where does community end and tool of oppression begin?
Right.
Is it keeping me naive and innocent?
Right.
Is it protecting a false sense of what success